just going to talk for a second about Cody's breathing behaviors. His pulmonologist made this cheat sheet for when he goes to the hospital, because once you sort of understand this is what he does, it makes things make sense. So he sort of does 4 things breathing-wise that will be good to know. Hyperventilation, hypoventilation, mechanical obstruction, this is our dog, and desatting from seizures. Those are the ways that breathing can be a challenge for him. So first, hyperventilation. He hyperventilates off and on a lot. Sometimes it's because he's agitated. Sometimes you can link it to pain or agitation. Sometimes, though, he just does it because his neurologist says his mitochondrial kids just have a hard time balancing CO2 and O2. So sometimes they'll hyper-breathe and sometimes they'll hypo-breathe. And it is what it is. You can't control it. We've tried. Trust me. So if he's hyperventilating a lot, no big deal, except that it does create a little bit of a consequence where he'll blow all of his CO2 off and then he'll hypoventilate as a consequence of all of his CO2 being gone. So he'll overbreathe and then he'll kind of stop and then he'll underbreathe. His drive to breathe will be a little weak because his CO2 is kind of climbing back up. And so when he hyperventilates, it is what it is. When he hypoventilates, it could look like a desat without a seizure. So if you walked in and his lips were a little dusky, or if his alarm's going off and you are like, wow, that doesn't seem seizure related, it's probably because he was just hyperventilating. And you scratch him on the head, tickle him, sit him up, that'll usually, it'll remind him to take a breath. It's really just not remembering to breathe. It's a drive to breathe thing that happens as a result of his hyperventilation. If it's excessive, like if he just sort of keeps forgetting and keeps desatting, we'll put a cannula on him just to give him more of a reserve so he doesn't desat when he has those, they call them central apneic pauses. So his central drive to breathe is what's affected in that case. Percy, gross. Sorry. And the third is mechanical obstruction. You can see a different video on that, and that's not behavioral, or it is literally just a bit of a floppy airway on days when he's super seizure-y or very just low energy. I probably see a mechanical obstruction episode once a month. It's very rare. Always happens overnight. And it's easy to treat. We got it figured out. The fourth thing is just desaturations appropriate to like a seizure. So if he has a seizure, at the end of the seizure, he will desat like anyone would. And the trick with him is he'll desat, and he desats pretty fast and pretty low because he doesn't have a lot of reserve in his lungs because he lays like this a lot. He has kyphoscoliosis, so he has kind of a hunchback, so his reserve in his lungs is pretty low. So when he stops breathing because of a seizure, there's not a lot there to hold him. And so he'll get dusky fast. But it's not like us when, it would take us a couple minutes to get blue or whatever. But he can get blue right away, but it doesn't mean he hasn't been breathing for a long time. It just means he didn't have a lot of reserve. So it can look a lot worse than it is. And after a seizure, if he desats and it's kind of low, we scratch his head, we kind of shake him, and it's back to that drive to breathe. It's hard for him to initiate that breath if he's had a seizure. Sometimes. He doesn't desat with seizures very often. If he does, we'll give him oxygen, we'll kind of scratch him, we'll give him some suction to get anything out of the way that might be like secretions or whatever. And if he's just not getting that breath back, you can ambu bag him, not in a resuscitative way, but just to give him a couple Band-Aid breaths until he kind of like jolts back into remembering to breathe again. These are all things that have never required a 911 call. They are part of his daily living. Like, I don't ambu bag him all the time. That is extremely rare. But if he's extremely sick or low energy or whatever, there have been times we've done that to just give him a Band-Aid till he gets that drive to breathe kind of hooked back up. For me, it's very ho-hum, all these things, they're just part of his day. This is his baseline, what I just shared. And this is part of how this disease affects breathing. And his pulmonologist wrote this up so that when he goes to the hospital, you know, if a nurse walks in and he's dusky, it's not like, oh my gosh, it's more like, oh, hey buddy, take a breath, come on, here's some oxygen, come on buddy, take a breath. It's more that.